Beneath the myth of oil wells and steel barrels, beneath the portraits of America's first billionaire staring coldly into history, there exists a deeper and more unsettling truth. John D. Rockefeller did not just build an empire of oil. He engineered a living system designed to outlast flesh, law, and time itself. A structure so precise that even when his empire was shattered by the courts, it continued breathing on its own, multiplying its wealth as if the man who built it had never left the room. In the fever of the late 19th century, when oil was the blood of industry and the smell of kerosene filled every port in America, Rockefeller moved with an obsession that looked almost mechanical. He saw inefficiency as sin and competition as disease. Where others drilled, he organized. Where others fought for barrels, he built systems to own the rails, the refineries, and the distribution channels. His genius was not in discovery, but in design. He understood that control could be arranged like architecture, and that wealth could be engineered to endure beyond the body that earned it. Standard Oil became his prototype. It was more than a company. It was a network of invisible agreements, shell entities, and trusts that allowed him to move capital like oxygen through pipes no one else could see. By 1900, he controlled nearly 90% of America's refining capacity, and the government called him a monopolist. But Rockefeller was already thinking beyond oil, beyond the age of combustion, towards something that would keep his fortune alive even if every well ran dry. When the Supreme Court finally struck Standard Oil in 1911, the world celebrated the death of monopoly. Newspapers declared victory for the free market. Rockefeller simply read the headlines and nodded, because the order to break apart his company only multiplied his holdings. He owned stock in each fragment: Exxon, Chevron, Mobil, Amoco, and as the new companies thrived independently, their combined values soared. What the law had called punishment, Rockefeller had quietly turned into replication. His fortune didn't collapse, it cloned itself. That was the moment his legacy shifted from industrial to structural genius. He had proven that money could be divided and still remain whole, that a man could lose his empire and yet keep control of its ghost. From that realization emerged the foundations, the trusts, the perpetual entities that carried his power beyond his own lifetime. The wealth of Rockefeller stopped being a possession and became a design, a perpetual wealth machine, quietly humming through decades of markets, recessions, and wars, untouched by mortality. Inside Rockefeller's private offices, among ledgers inked in neat, disciplined handwriting, the future of dynasty finance was being drawn not by artists or philosophers, but by lawyers and accountants who understood one quiet truth: that power endures not through possession, but through structure, and that the richest families in the world would one day survive, not because of what they owned, but because of how they owned it. The great industrialist who once commanded refineries and railroads began to design something far more elegant, a system that could hold, grow, and shield wealth long after the man who conceived it had turned to dust. The cornerstone of this system was the trust, a simple legal mechanism that, under Rockefeller's direction, became an immortal vault. He placed his assets into these trusts, dividing them among family members, yet ensuring that none could truly dismantle or squander them. The money could move, invest, and compound, but it could never escape the structure. It was wealth with a brain, self-regulating, self-protecting, self-renewing. He had turned paper into permanence. Each trust was like a gear in his financial machine, turning slowly, silently, and forever. Then came the next layer, the foundations, dressed in the language of charity but engineered with the precision of capital. The Rockefeller Foundation, created in 1913, became the moral armor of a man accused of greed. It funded education, medicine, and science, but it also became a shield, converting public scrutiny into social virtue, while keeping the family's influence woven into the architecture of global progress. The foundation invested not only in universities and hospitals, but in ideas that stabilized the very system that preserved Rockefeller's wealth, capitalism itself. Behind these visible acts of generosity was an invisible financial logic. The foundation could hold shares, collect dividends, and fund projects indefinitely, without triggering the taxes that eroded ordinary fortunes. The structure separated ownership from benefit, creating a distinction between control and liability. Rockefeller understood that wealth did not need to be hidden, it needed to be reframed. By turning assets into instruments of public good, he ensured that no law or revolution could seize them without appearing to attack philanthropy itself. As decades passed, his descendants refined the architecture. The family office, a private financial institution managing intergenerational wealth, became the operating heart of the machine. It handled investments, taxes, and governance, treating the family's fortune like a corporation with a soul. The Rockefeller family office still operates today, quietly advising other dynasties on how to mimic the formula, how to institutionalize family wealth so that it behaves like an entity immune to time. Through trusts, foundations, and family offices, Rockefeller achieved what monarchs and empires could not, a self-sustaining cycle of influence that converted private capital into public respect and philanthropy into strategic insulation. His genius was not in greed, but in geometry, the way he shaped money into an orbit that never decayed, circling through markets and generations with mechanical grace. And though the man is gone, the structure remains, invisible, disciplined, eternal, the true machine he built, quietly humming beneath the surface of modern capitalism. If you follow the trail of modern wealth, from hedge funds in Manhattan to philanthropic empires in Silicon Valley, you will find Rockefeller's fingerprints in places his contemporaries could never have imagined. The architecture he built, once considered a private invention of an oil tycoon, has become the invisible language of the global elite. Family offices now manage trillions under the same quiet principles of separation, protection, and compounding that he perfected more than a century ago. His formula, convert income into assets, assets into structures, and structures into influence, is the code that sustains dynasties. Even today, the Rockefeller family's reach continues through the Rockefeller Foundation, Rockefeller Capital Management, and Rockefeller Brothers Fund, all operating as extensions of that original blueprint. They finance clean energy projects, medical research, and policy think tanks. On the surface, they appear as instruments of progress, but beneath the philanthropy lies the same core mechanism, the ability to turn purpose into permanence. The foundation's endowments invest, the profits fund influence, and the influence safeguards the investments. A cycle so seamless that it functions like a biological process, immune to the passing of generations. What makes Rockefeller's wealth truly perpetual isn't the money itself, but the discipline embedded in its movement. His descendants were not left with the freedom to spend endlessly, they were left with the obligation to manage endlessly. Each generation became a custodian rather than an inheritor, bound to the idea that capital is never fully owned, only maintained. This mindset, the belief that stewardship, not indulgence, preserves power, has echoed across the richest families in America. From the Carnegies to the Waltons, the system Rockefeller designed became the standard operating code of enduring wealth. And yet the deeper brilliance of his design was philosophical. He understood that if wealth could survive criticism, taxation, and time, it had to become something moral in appearance, something society would protect rather than dismantle. His foundations wrapped capital in virtue, turning money into mission and greed into legacy. What began as an oil monopoly ended as a moral monopoly, a story so deeply embedded in modern capitalism that most people no longer see it as his creation at all. That is the secret of Rockefeller's perpetual wealth machine. It isn't a vault filled with gold or a secret investment formula. It is a mindset encoded into institutions, a system that transforms private fortune into public power, ensuring that wealth no longer depends on the man, it depends on the structure. The man died in 1937. The machine never stopped. If you found value in uncovering the hidden design behind Rockefeller's eternal fortune, support this journey of financial history by liking this video, sharing it with those who think wealth is only about money, and subscribing to Financial Ripples, where every story reveals how the past still funds the present.